even though it's easier to say education is the answer, it's very difficult to achieve that when you've got environments where aren't conducive to homework or study or a full night's sleep, an adequate meal, all the things we're familiar with. So I've wandered far from your question, but I hope I've answered it.
I'm a tourist in the East.
Welcome.
I'd love you to talk, particularly when you raise the point that a prohibition on racism affecting the statutory powers of government would be a great thing as a help to people who've been affected by racism. But it goes wider than Aboriginal people, First Australians. And there's a real movement in this country now about how our governments are being racist in their actions towards refugees. I believe this is an issue that's vital to be considered in the constitutional change.
Look, I must admit, and with the eyes of the Chief Justice upon me, I hadn't considered the legal consequences in respect of that constitutional change on the refugee debate, but I'm not really sure how to answer that, other than to flick it to the Chief Justice. But you're right. I mean, the issue of racism and the issue of white Australia, our connection to the Anglo world, it is still deeply embedded within us as a nation, and we're still, I think, slowly struggling, to work that out. And you see that debate happen, particularly, are we part of Asia? What are we? But certainly in respect of Aboriginal people, I look at that and think, well, do we want some change now, or can we wait for better change? And I used to subscribe to some change because a referendum will never get up, but the longer I watch the debate, you know what, because of education and the experience of some of the younger people in Australia, perhaps I'm willing to wait a bit longer for better change.
I'm an ex-teacher from Aquinas, actually.
From Aquinas.
Interested in your opinion on what's happening here in the Kimberley, and it's to do with your experience too. You've gone from Kalgoorlie down to our school in Perth, and there are kids here in Kimberley. People are saying the only way they're going to get a good education is to go down to Perth and get some of these top schools down there, and a lot of them are finding it all too much. Now, you've made it, but there are a lot of kids who can't make it and end up coming back here. I'm just wondering, is there another solution whereby we can get these kids educated to that level in our own area?
I went to Aquinas, hence the reference. I think what we can do, definitely, is deliver quality primary school education. I chair Clontarf Aboriginal College, the school, not the football academy, the school. We have 160 kids, of which 60% are from outside Perth now. They're coming down. I'm very familiar with Trinity College. Trinity has gone from very, early on unsuccessfully bringing kids from the Kimberley that would then go home after a term or shorter. Now their program's much better and they stay longer, if not all, and are graduating kids through Year 12. I think to get that sort of education at the high school level, you probably have to leave. It's a terrible thing to say, but I think you probably have to leave. That doesn't necessarily mean you're giving everything up. And I talk about I'll refer to Pearson's orbits. We get at Clontarf now, we have a waiting list because families in the Kimberley, and LaSalle, another school that has a particular relationship with Balgo. And I like that because they've got kids there now whose brothers and sisters went to LaSalle. And so that's generating an incredible, I've seen my brother do it, I can do it, or my sister do it. And so at LaSalle or at Aquinas or at Trinity or wherever, I didn't know it then, but I know now. I went to one of the best schools, I think, probably in the world. It was this fantastic experience. I was very lucky. And I think that's what I'd like Aboriginal people to demand of their own kids. Now, and they are. The fact that Clontarf has a waiting list now, and we provide something unique at Clontarf. We're entirely Aboriginal high school. That's getting better and better. It used to be that's where you sent the kids who fell through every other crack, you sent them to Clontarf. It's no longer that. So I think people are making those decisions, and not just Aboriginal people. I think most people acknowledge, okay, well, you can get, and you should be able to get, a base level of education through to Year 12 in regional WA. But I think if you're looking at that, extra opportunities, if you might be good at music or theatre or sport or whatever, then we have to create the environment where you can come to these schools. And by and large, from my speaking to principals at these expensive big schools that provide all those services for their kids, they're looking for Aboriginal kids. They can't fill their spaces. So, okay, well, how do we create the support? And that's always it. How do we create the support? So a kid who's come from Balgo, a long way from home, feels like they can go through 5, 6 years of high school a long way from home. And we're getting better at it. Trinity, as I said, I went to Aquinas, but my mum spent a lot of time at Trinity and I came to know a lot of those kids, and they're getting better at it. And I think looking at Wyatt MLA out there in the Fitzroy Valley, I mean, some extraordinary investments now from some of these large private schools. That's, I'm sure, not built from profit motives, it's built from social conscience motives, and I think I'd like to see more of that from some of the bigger schools, perhaps in Perth.
I haven't got a loud voice, so education is very important to all kids. But I find our kids don't have that support at home. They might have it at school. But when David and I was here with our son years ago, many years ago, we started up a homework class.
Oh, yeah.
And that was excellent. So all the kids didn't feel horrible by having to go home and not do their homework the next day at school, get into trouble. And I think you should look at providing, the government should, after our teachers, after school, to just help these young ones to do their homework. I've got a couple of
No? Good.
the ALT land you mentioned, it was a secure land for Aboriginal people to live on.
Right.
And having ALT land made me feel that these people always had somewhere to go to. Now, that was taken away, and these people that are on the land sell the land, like New Zealand did, and then, you know, they've got nothing. So I'm a bit wary of this ALT because I think they did a damn good job, even in a hard way, even though you don't think so.
Oh, no, look, I will respond to the ALT issue first. It's not a critique of anyone who's been on the ALT board. My dad chaired it for a long period of time, and the ALT board members do a good job in a tough environment, underinvestment, etc. I don't propose to reduce the security of title for Aboriginal people, absolutely not. I propose to ensure that that is more secure, more certain. The ALT land is now in a state of no one knows who owns what or who's in control of what when it comes to Commonwealth spending and state spending over many years. And the 1972 Act that set up the ALT land was a very paternalistic debate. So I think we need to move on from the ALT structure to create more certainty for Aboriginal people. And you can do that in a way that protects from those sale concerns that you had. But the ALT currently holds, for example, parcels of freehold title in major towns. Why? It holds pastoral leases. It shouldn't hold those. There'll be a much tougher conversation. I mean, everybody in this room will know the story of the ALT land in town. It's usually underinvested. No one's really willing to take control of it, and no one knows what to do with it. So I think there are ways we can do it in a way that protects and secures Aboriginal tenure without but getting a better tenure system that we have now. And the first question? Oh, homework. Yes. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And there are, in metropolitan Perth, in some schools that have great homework programs. I hate to keep coming back to Pearson, but I was in a couple of the schools in Cape York recently, and they've managed to extend, in an agreement with the state government, extend the school day. It starts earlier and finishes at 4 o'clock. And in that school day, they also have language lessons, and it's linked also with attendance programs and things. So the attendance is fantastic, and the instruction's fantastic, and the results are really good. So you're not sort of sending kids off at 3 or 3:15. They're learning till 4, and then there are programs after 4 o'clock. So you're right, because it's easier to say education, but if you don't have an environment at home that's conducive to having something to eat, sitting down and doing some homework, then you're not going to get that result. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
So will there be any money going to
Will there, sorry?
Will there be any money going
The question was, will there be any money going for it? And it was only a matter of time. I am the Shadow Treasurer. Of course there will be.
We've got time, I think, for only 2 questions, really, because we need to take Ben to a plane. So, shall we go this lady first?
Good afternoon. Thanks, Ben. Just one question in relation to PBCs, local governments, self-determination, education. Where does governance fit into it?
Where does governance?
Government. And how do we educate our people to have a level of government, self-management, self-determination? Having worked state, federal, territory, local government, so I'm at the Shire of Broome, everyone. Also, Yarra Karajara woman, working on the Elulers. It's one of the most interesting things I've worked on. I worked during the intervention with some of my other colleagues here. That was difficult in the local government sector. Under federal, state, local, PBC, and governance is the hardest thing to progress anything. And our people, I'm sorry, but we just don't have it. We don't get it. How do we progress that?
Well, governance is hard for everyone, non-Aboriginal, Aboriginal. And it's always, we've all read, another newspaper article about some Aboriginal group that's gone into administration. Terrible, terrible, terrible. I'm absolutely certain we can deal with this. We can do it. We've done it and we'll do it again. I think there is a really interesting, even though I just spent a lot of time critiquing the Premier, the one thing I've supported him wholeheartedly is the settlement with the Noongar people, right? And I think we're going to see out of that a really interesting it's going to be the settlement. It's a really interesting example of what the governance structure will be around that settlement. I think it's about $600 million in cash and about another $400 million in land. So it's a significant organisation to be created out of that. And speaking with those on the South East Aboriginal Land and Sea Council and in government, a lot of effort is going into what is the governance structure, who are the people, how do we train them and get them ready, because that's one you don't want to fail. How do we? I don't have that answer, but that's not insurmountable, I would have thought.
It shouldn't be, but can I assure you, and one of all different levels, just our mob actually do find it quite difficult. Working in 3 or 4 different layers. I don't know how
And that's something that in the Kimberley we've been talking about for a long time, a regional structure, right? And there's various options at play at the moment. But ultimately, if you're not actually giving regional power and responsibility, what's the point? So the same argument we have in the state parliament about Canberra is probably the same argument, I guess, that happens up here about Perth. I think devolving power is not new. This has been the foundation of democracy for a long time. The decisions made by people who are impacted on them is where we need to go. And that's where governments, doesn't matter who's in power, has been really reluctant to release power once they've got it, or decision making, or at least want to have a veto over that decision that's made. So that's why I talk about government obstinately holding risk, and I refer to that in the ALT lands or decisions. We've got to allow people to take risks, to make decisions about their own futures.
PBC? There's business people under PBC that get help from the government, and then us as blackfellas, we have been creative. We've followed the program. It's a step program and all that, close the gap and everything. And yet we've been knocked down at our knees because they want to herd us like cattle and have us all in one pen and have one voice to speak for us. We're independent.
You're exactly right.
Ourselves.
Yeah, there is a view in government, the beast that it is. What's the Aboriginal view on this? So, well, I'll give you my view, and someone else have another view, like we all would in this room. There's no such thing as what's the Aboriginal position on something. That's something people haven't yet got their head around. So in terms of native title, though, where Aboriginal people have been very creative is working through archaic, restrictive structures and somehow getting outcomes out of that. They've been very creative in many situations. So, In terms of native title, I mean, I'm apprehensive about changes to native title because I find the discussion rapidly goes to, like the changes around heritage, rapidly goes to how do we kind of make it easier for other people to do things. And that's great in one level, but as I said, heritage for many Aboriginal people, that's the one asset they value, and it's something that we shouldn't just, even though the current regime is flawed, we've got to be careful with what we put in its place.
Hello, I'm Gambi Dara. I'm Billy Stewart William Matthew. I'm the grandfather. I lost my father when I was 11 years old. Now, this guy stay old. I mean, that's when I was I'm growing up on the streets. I mean, I gave up drinking 13 years. It was my father for brothers to look after me. And with my Luan culture, the body tribe, I don't want to think about the past. I want to move into the future. This prejudice, it's got to stop. I want to do good things. I want to help my people. So all this thing about kids learning, I mean, I never go to school. I left school from one up when I was 7 years old. It's a hard life I went through. But the reason why I gave up drinking, I sort of passed away with double pneumonia window at the East Kimberley. And through that experience, God showed me what to do. I seen my land all dead. All died, all my animals, nobody wasn't living. I was standing in the eggs, looking down. Then I look up, seeing all my angels singing. Then see the beautiful sun. And I made a choice. I choose life. I don't want to destroy my land, my culture, anybody. I don't want to disrespect any people from overseas, anything. I welcome people to my land with my good heart, Leah. But you help me, I will help you. I'll solve your problem.
Well, let me... I'll just say now, I'll be very quick in my answer because if I don't get the flight, I'll certainly have a problem in Perth with my wife. You're right. I mean, I hate these debates around heritage. I hate the debates around native title. I hate the debates. The constitutional record. I don't like them, even though I can see the grand plan because it's so distracting when you sort of want to get on and just live and do things successfully. And hence my, often government in all its glory and clumsy way gets in the way of that and creates obstacles and things. So in the 1970s, there were two pieces of legislation, 72 and 74, that are still in place. The AAPA Act and the Heritage Act, it's time to revisit them and remove some of the structures that they've put in place and just give more opportunity for Aboriginal people. As I said, it's almost, if I'm going to put it down to the free market principle, give risk to Aboriginal people and let them run.
The reason why I did it is 24/11/1978. That's when I was born.
78. Young man.
Okay. Ben, on behalf of everybody here and Nulungu Research Institute, the university, and all of the audience, I wish to thank you very much for presenting our 2015 Nulungu Reconciliation Lecture and a token of brew.
Thank you very much.